Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Public Safety Committee and Government Operations Committee joint work session. Today is Monday, September 23rd, 2024. Today we have one topic on the agenda, which is Bill 1224, Police Accountability Board and Administrative Charging Committee compensation. And as we begin, we want to thank Ms. Christine Wellens for once again and always preparing a most informative packet for us. And I'm going to turn to the chair of the Government Operations Committee. I did want to note that for anybody who's counting, there's only 5 members of the joint committee since I serve on both. And let me ask the Vice President of Council and Chair of the Government Operations Committee, Councilmember Stewart, if she has any opening remarks. I'll turn to the other committee members, and then we'll ask any panel, though the panel seems right lonely at this point, Dr. Stoddard, if there's anything from them, and then we'll ask Ms. Wellens to lead us through the packet. Council Vice President, please.
No, I don't have any opening remarks other than to thank Chair Katz for chairing this meeting, and I look forward to the discussion today. Thank you.
Any other? Earl, would you like to join us? And yes. And maybe, and I'm going to ask them to ask you both to introduce yourselves, please, and then we'll start with Ms. Wellens.
Good morning, members of the Joint Committee. Earl Stoddard, Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, Office of County Executive.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Forrest Gilman Riley. I am the Administrative Director for the Police Accountability Board and Administrative Charging Committee.
Well, thank you and welcome. I think this is your first meeting officially in this capacity, so welcome, and thank you for doing what you're doing. And with that,
thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, council members. Bill 1224, Police Accountability Board and Administrative Charging Committee compensation is before you today. The bill was introduced by the council president at the request of the county executive. The bill would achieve 2 purposes. First, it would provide compensation to the civilian members of the police trial board in the amount of $500 per day of trial. And the idea there is to assist with recruitment of these members. My understanding is that there's currently a pool of 4 members, and the hope is to expand that to 10. And also to provide, reasonable compensation to the individuals who are serving in this capacity. And the other aspect of the bill is that it would alter the compensation of the PAB and ACC chair, in that currently the assumption under the way the law is written is that the PAB chair would also serve on the ACC, and therefore, since they're serving double duty, would get $22,000 in compensation plus an annual CPI adjustment. However, it's not required that it be the PAB chair that also serves that double role, and so the bill would allow whoever is selected, whoever from the PAB is selected, to also serve on the ACC. That would be the individual receiving the $22,000. A couple issues for your consideration. I know you want to hear from the panelists. I'll just note that issue number 2 in the staff memorandum, which is on page 3. It's on page 3 of the memo. There is one staff recommended amendment.
Could you explain what it is, please? For what number 2 is for the amendment?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this amendment would simply delete from the bill the uncodified section 2, which, as the bill was introduced, this section would give retroactive compensation to civilian trial board members, and unfortunately that's not permitted under the state law, and therefore staff is recommending just striking that. Otherwise, there aren't any amendments I'm aware of that are identified in the packet anyway.
No, we're going to have to strike it. We don't have authority to do it. So, Dr. Stoddard, or I don't know what your official title is called anymore, but anyhow, please, anything else to add?
Yeah, so I know that there's been some discussion amongst the joint committees with regard to the number 500. When we originally drafted this number, there were no comparators, meaning when we first conceived this, no one was paying trial board members. And so the number that we settled on was 500, recognizing two things. Number one, we don't want anyone to not be able to serve by virtue of having to take personal leave or miss hours of work. And number two, there would be some level of work outside the actual time of the individual trial, meaning some of these trials would involve review of testimony, review of video, review of other evidence that led to the determination around the particular officer, and we wanted to acknowledge that while not necessarily allowing for those hours to be billed, because that would be a very difficult thing to sort of audit or review from a perspective of the county. That said, I think we'd be totally amenable to a different number besides 500 based on the fact that other jurisdictions have settled on numbers a bit lower than that, and so we want to be competitive with those other jurisdictions, recognizing the cost of living in Montgomery County, but not necessarily far and away number one on that list. So we would be totally amenable to a different number. We can discuss that when it comes time.
Mr. Gilman-Riley, did you have anything to add?
No, I believe Dr. Stoddard covered the main points of why we think this is an appropriate measure to help community engagement with the PAB and the ACC and to have productive trial boards. But I am grateful for the committee's time and hope to be hearing more from you.
Thank you. You know, you start dealing with arbitrary numbers and you don't know what the right arbitrary number is. We know that what we're doing at this point hasn't exactly worked to the degree we would like it to work. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm fine with the arbitrary number that we've come up with. I think we should review this, I don't know, 6 months, a year, whatever is necessary to see if it is or if it isn't working, and go from there. I don't know, anybody else, please?
I know we were trying to look around in my office to try and find out what other jurisdictions, particularly in Central Maryland, that being my focus, right? Because I'm not, we are not Western Maryland, we are not the Eastern Shore, and I get that Central Maryland is a more comparative place to look. And we only were able to come up with the numbers from Anne Arundel County and Prince George's counties, which are very different from one another. So Anne Arundel pays from each other even. Anne Arundel pays $250 total for the 2-day training at the Police Standards Training Commission that is required of the trial board members, and then pays $125 per day of service on a trial board, which, if you divide that by 8, ends up being less than the minimum wage in Montgomery County, right? So put that in bucket 1. Bucket 2 is Prince George's County, which pays an hourly rate for the days of service up to $480 per day of service. And to your point about preparation and things like that, that's true. And they're not accounting for preparation necessarily in that, but also then it requires are we tracking the hours and that kind of thing, which can become cumbersome. And we do have to be cognizant of the fact that preparation is required in order to participate and thoroughly discharge your duty as a member of the trial board. So I think having a flat fee is the best way to go. I have 2 concerns, meaning we have language in this bill about CPI salary adjustments for other things, but not for the whatever rate we land on, 500 or otherwise. There's not parity there with that. So then that would require the council to come back and continually have an adjustment or figure that out. So that's one piece. Obviously, I fully support the amendment to remove the retroactive application because that's prohibited by law. I just think it bears some consideration of what is the right starting number, and having an articulable reason why. So could either of you speak to that?
The articulate reason why the number is the number? Is that
Right. Like, so knowing now, obviously this was drafted a while ago, right? And we're just getting to it now, but like, is that where you still are? What do you think works best for us? And especially knowing we don't necessarily want to have to come back and adjust the statute.
Yeah, as Chairman Katz alluded to, obviously we're picking, fairly. I mean, certainly when we selected 500 was totally arbitrary, meaning there was no comparators, and I'm guessing that Anne Arundel County and Prince George's County felt themselves in the same boat of picking arbitrary rates that they thought would reasonably cover a decent enough swath of the potential applicants to make sure that you're not just limiting by hourly wage or by the upper ends that someone could or wouldn't serve. And I want to draw very quickly a moment to distinguish this from jury duty service, where it's a constitutional responsibility, number one. Number two, you're actually afforded a guarantee that you're going to be given leave by your employer by virtue of the law as well. In this case, obviously, you're going to have to either take hours lost of wages or take personal, annual, or other types of leave to allow you to serve on this in a way that's slightly different than, significantly different than jury duty. And so I wanted to cover that first. I think if we're going to do a flat rate, I think it's totally reasonable that a lower number, somewhere maybe between the $300 and $400 number, could be reasonable. I think that attaching CPI to it is probably a reasonable thing, so that the council does not have to come back and revisit this in future times. But again, I mean, I could not tell you today what level of preparation because it's going to be different by trial. And so we're going to find that out, and we'll be able to have some actual data. We've had multiple trial boards requested over the last 6 weeks, and so we'll be able to start to get a breadth of what that requirement looks like, and we'll be able to track with the individual trial board members what their invested amount of time is to understand better moving forward. And so again, I think we're going to be picking a number here that is a bit arbitrary, and then we'll have to be informed by experience on how to proceed forward. But I do think the CPI connection is a worthwhile thing to keep it tied to the economy.
Hearing that, I think I'd be willing to entertain a figure that's perhaps between the two numbers you just said, which would be a 350 if I heard you correctly, and then but maintain a CPI adjustment language added to that, so that we can make sure they're getting an increase based on inflation. Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Dr. Steyer, I know this is all new for different jurisdictions, but do we know how Prince George's recruitment is going?
I'm not aware. So I can speak to our recruitment. And so for the longest time, we only had one trial board member, and that was when we knew we were in sort of dire straits at that point. The way that I want to speak generally to the way this works, you want to have a pool of individuals so that when a trial comes along, you can they've already been pre-trained. You don't want to have to go through the 48 hours of training with that person before an individual trial. You want them to sort of be a pre-approved list that the PAB, Police Accountability Board, can draw from. And so we're up to 4. We didn't recruit for 4 slots. We sort of did an open solicitation, and anyone who they deemed were appropriate was selected. And so we haven't run into an issue where we did not have a trial board member available for a trial, but we were definitely at a situation where we had one person who was available for that one trial. And so, because of leave or other conflicts, not every trial board member is able to work whenever. And so, I would certainly say an uncompensated situation like we're in now is going to be untenable as we get more trial boards. But I don't know what successful Prince George's County has been relative to us. I haven't heard any reports from them saying that they're struggling to fill their trial boards.
Okay. Thank you. And I want to thank Councilmember Lukey for digging in and finding what other jurisdictions are doing. I think I agree with the chair that I'm comfortable keeping it at the 500 given the responsibility and the need for this as we're moving forward, and would agree with the CPI adjustment included.
Please, Council President, and then Councilmember Mink.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the discussion. Appreciate the digging in by Councilmember Lukey and all the comments. I'm happy to go with the will of the body here. I will say I think we should do one or the other. I mean, I get the idea of CPI, but if the goal here is to go back and revisit this to see if it's working, then we actually should come back to it. If, so I think it's either one or the other. Either we decide that we're picking the right number and we don't intend to ever come back to it, or we're not sure if we're picking the right number, but we're going to aim high because, we understand the importance of this and want to make sure that we can recruit because of the weight of these decisions and the need to make sure that we're able to bring in a representative group of people to make these weighty decisions that have real impacts on people's lives. But then we should revisit it and we should come back. So my view would be if we're going to go to a lower number, then we absolutely should include CPI. If we're going to go with the 500 number, I think we shouldn't. If the intention is to come back and revisit it, then I think whenever we come back to it, we figure out exactly what the number is. Maybe it's keep the number, add CPI. Maybe it's a higher number, add CPI. But we figure out what that number is at that point and tie it to inflation and not intend to revisit and come back to it unless there's a major issue. So appreciate all you back.
Thank you. Councilmember Mink.
Thank you. Just want to note that we want to make sure, as the council president alluded to, that we not only that we're able to fill those seats, but that we have a representative population who's coming in. And so I think it's really important that we don't go too low because for the reasons that Dr. Starter that you described, that taking the time to do this provides more of a burden, obviously, on some folks and on other folks. And we want to make sure that here in Montgomery County that we are doing what we can to make sure that we are reaching everybody and affording the opportunity for them to be represented on the trial board. How long can the days go for folks?
I think most of them are set to be an 8-hour day, but obviously, if you're getting close to the end of the trial, there are periods when it could go longer. Or if you're in the middle of testimony from a particular witness and you want to get that witness in, it can be a bit variable. But the way it's described to me, it's generally 2 to 3 days are the length of most trials, and they tend to go most of the day of an 8-hour day on those days, and maybe slightly shorter on one day, slightly longer on the other.
Okay, so they're not prohibited from going overtime. They are generally looking at full days.
They're generally looking at full days. The last day of the trial can sometimes be shorter. Sometimes it can be even half days, depending on, again, it can be based on the scheduling of witnesses. It can be based on certain other things. The administrative law judge that is involved will often set the pace of the proceeding, and so that's sort of the way it will work.
Yeah, I mean the unpredictability too of how I'm just thinking out loud here, but the unpredictability of how many days it's going to be is also really a pretty serious burden for folks who may have a limited number of personal days and have to negotiate things with their boss and that sort of thing.
As well as childcare and other issues like that.
Absolutely.
That you're going to face in this too.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I would be supportive of keeping the 500 and seeing where that lands us. I agree with everyone that it would behoove us to come back and see how that's working out. Not just in terms of are we able to get people, but are we getting a representative sample? I also agree that with folks that I think that we want to end up with whatever the right number is down the road, having CPI attached to it so that we don't have to continually be coming back to it. Whether we put that on there this time or next time, I don't have strong feelings about that. I mean, I kind of feel like if it's going to end up there eventually and we are going to come back anyway, that we might as well put it on there now, but I don't have super strong feelings about it as long as we make sure that we do come back and have it on there. Right. I mean, my concern is also that we're. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's fair. I mean, my concern is also that we don't come back to it, and which is why I think that if we're saying that, like, good governance wise, we want to have CPI attached, but I see your point that may motivate us to come back and put it on, and that's fine. So fine to go with the will of the body on that. But given that your original estimate, looking at kind of the many variables in front of us, the range of days, the amount of preparation time, things of that nature, landed you at 500. That seems like a not unreasonable number to me as well, and I would be fine moving forward with that, and then potentially coming back to add on the CPI down the road, and or adjust. Thanks.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think we're not going to be in a position to know how this has played out in other jurisdictions as well as here for a little bit of time. And as in probably not till after we've done next year's operating budget. And so maybe in June would be a decent time for us to commit to coming back post-budget to do any adjustments that we need to do. But I did have two other jurisdictions. Baltimore County gets a $50 per day per diem, which is, again, barely more than jury service. And Carroll's is $125 per day, which matches Anne Arundel County. So I think given the variability that we're seeing in other jurisdictions throughout Central Maryland, everybody probably needs to collectively put their heads together to say what's working, what's not working. And in the recruitment for the members, and this is something that's more nuts and bolts, not necessarily tied to the whatever the rate is that is given, but ensuring that the folks who are participating come from a wide range of backgrounds, which we want, but also have the capacity to manage the level of work that is needed, right? And so we have to be very careful in how we're doing that and managing that to make sure we're doing the best possible job in running the trial boards. So with that, I'm fine with going with it as proposed and requesting that we come back in June to do an evaluation with comparisons to the other jurisdictions throughout Central Maryland, both on the recruitment front and on the compensation front. Thank you.
And it could be no later than June. If we know something sooner, please don't keep it a secret. And I have a feeling you wouldn't. And do we need two separate, I'm asking Ms. Wellens, do we need two separate motions to take care that we can't do what you said we can't do for the retroactive part?
Right. So, I mean, you can do it by motion or you can do it by consensus if there's no objection to the amendment.
Okay, so are we good by consensus that it's as it is? So we are doing that without objection, please.
Great. Thank you.
Anything else for us?
Just moving the bill in its entirety.
That's
Right.
I think we can do that as by consensus as well. Okay, we're good? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you all. We are adjourned.
Benefits leave a lot of people who need assistance